Welcome to another awesome wristwatch review, and today we shall be discussing the era of the neo-vintage modern Rolex. Now, Rolex SA continuously improves their watches, and this can be seen in their patented innovations over the years. Now, for the casual buyer like us, it may therefore be difficult to put a finger on defining a specific date that we can say makes a neo-vintage modern Rolex. With that being said, if you look at the history of Rolex improvements that they made, especially over the last 3 to 4 decades, you will find a handful of key milestone technological improvements that will critically define the brand and form the key DNA of the watches they produce. Now, with these key tech milestones, if you will, we can then definitively determine objectively and without bias the actual date of the era of the modern Rolex. Now I have two examples here, the 15200 and the 116234, date just and the date, right? So now let's take a look at what are these technological advances that we can use to define the neo-vintage modern Rolex. Firstly, 904L steel. Arguably one of the most important milestone improvements, in 1985, Rolex decided to start using 904L steel for their watches, cases, and bracelets. Rolex dubs it oyster steel. Costing about 3 times the cost of normal 316L steel, 904L steel brings with it 4 main benefits. Firstly, extremely high corrosion resistance. Known to be used in industrial applications, 904L steel will better resist rust and ensure the longevity of the watch, case, and bracelet. Secondly, easily polished to a brilliant shine. Thanks to its inherent chemical composition, a Rolex made with 904L steel will shine brighter than its older sibling. Thirdly, a whiter appearance. Again, thanks to its inherent DNA, a 904L steel Rolex will look whiter or lighter in color. And fourthly, less malleable. Able to resist bending better, 904L steel bracelets sag less, and they avoid the dreaded bendy bracelet sag better. Next, let us discuss the second key milestone, which is the solid gold dial furniture. Dial furniture meaning the hands, hour markers, and Rolex logo. If you do a cursory search of vintage Rolexes on the internet prior to 1980, you will invariably discover that many of these watches have corroded hands, hour markers, and the Rolex logo. Rolex therefore decided to do something about this, and in the 1980s, solid 18-karat gold started to be used in their watches' dial furniture. In other words, their hands, markers, and the Rolex coronet on the dial. Now, this was a leap forward, and it is for this reason that you will find most Rolex produced in the late 80s onwards having hands, markers that are to a less degree succumbed to corrosion. Therefore, with the use of gold hands and markers, your Rolex would stay immaculate longer. Thirdly, we shall discuss the third key milestone, which is the 3135 movement. A legend in its own right. Ask any honest watchmaker and they will sing the praises of the 3135 Rolex movement. Introduced in the late 1980s, the 3135 was a leap forward in movement technology for Rolex. Its admirable key attributes are as follows. Firstly, supreme serviceability. In other words, a joy to take apart, service, and put back together due to the logical placement of its parts. Secondly, accuracy. Able to keep accurate time in different circumstances. The third milestone of the 3135 is robustness. It is useful for daily usage as the movement can take a beating and keep on going. And the fourth attribute of the 3135 is the inclusion of notable technological features that were previously known to be high horology, like height adjustable balance bridge, Teflon coated reversal wheels that were introduced in the 3000, gold microstellar weighted screws, Kif shop absorber, high quality flat polish screws, chamfered and polished bridges, perlage and sunburst polishing on flat surfaces. Now, let's discuss the fourth key milestone of a neo-vintage modern Rolex. It is the Sapphire Crystal. It was introduced in early 1990s, and Rolex heralded the Sapphire Crystal into their range in the early 1990s. Henceforth, a Rolex crystal will be thinner and less susceptible to scratches as compared to the acrylic crystals that came before it. A useful innovation for daily wear and for those using their watches for sports, adventure, climbing, for example. Now, 30 years later till this date, most luxury watches are still fitted with sapphire crystal glass. Fifth, let us discuss the fifth key milestone of a modern Rolex. It is the luminous material. Now, Super Luminova was introduced in the year 2000, while Luminova was used by Rolex in 1998 and Tritium in 1963. Now, all of us know the tragic story of the dial painters who passed after licking their paint brushes used to apply radium luminous material of the dials. And in 1963, Rolex heralded the change to tritium, a much less radioactive material. And Rolex watch dials would see tritium used on them for 30 years plus until 1998, when Rolex used Luminova, a revolutionary luminous material with no radioactive properties. But in the year 2000, Super Luminova was born with an improved properties such as stronger brightness, shorter charging times, meaning exposure time to light up the luminosity, and reduced decay of brightness, meaning the luminosity lasted longer. And with the introduction of Luminova and Super Luminova, the T Swiss T printing on the dials was replaced with Swiss made, meaning the two letter T's were dropped. Thus, the Super Luminova luminous material was a step forward in terms of luminous material on the dials. Now, before I conclude, it would be good to explain the reason for this exercise in determining the neo-vintage modern Rolex, because a few months ago, a friend of mine asked my advice as he wanted to purchase a pre-owned Rolex. And he shared that he wanted one that was not too old and yet affordable. My recommendation instinctively was to go neo-vintage, being watches born in the 1990s and 2000s. But that got me thinking as to why Rolex watches of this era were, in my eyes, so good value. And after doing this research, I concluded that yes, the reason is because the neo-vintage Rolex had these 5 key attributes that made them so attractive and made them last so well after all these years, meaning the 904L steel, the solid gold dial furniture, the 3135 movement, the sapphire crystal, and the Luminova or Super Luminova luminous material on the dial. So with these key milestones, when they are combined together, what we get is a Rolex watch armed with the most striking and important innovations the brand had established. And for us, the consumer, are Buying a modern era Rolex simply means that we have an awesome wristwatch that can stand tall even when compared with its latest siblings from the current catalog. Well, that's all I have, and I do hope you've enjoyed this little technical video on the definition of a neo-vintage modern Rolex. As always, if you find it useful, please consider liking and subscribing and commenting. It really helps the channel a lot. And see you in the next one. Enjoy your watches in good health. Ciao.